TCS is open to sustainability uh, in Gloucester, Camden, and Burlington counties, looking to improve their communities, connect regionally. TCS is the hub for sustainability in our municipalities. I'd like to introduce Kevin Fenning, president of Fernbrook Nursery, and he's here to give us some insight on the invasive plant species list. You ready, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, you can start. Maybe if you could do is walk us through. Well, I guess we know the outcome, right? We know how it ended, but I guess that's just the beginning. But what was the process you did to even get it to the point where it was able to be vetoed? And then I can guess why it was vetoed. And then I'd like to go into what do we have to do next? Where we go from here?
Okay, well, it came to a surprise to a lot of people back in July. I was at a twilight meeting sponsored by New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association, and one of the speakers was a conservationist from Hopewell, Pennsylvania, and he presented the fact that New Jersey is now going to come out with a invasive plant species list that mimics surrounding states, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware. And on that list, some of the plant material we all have known, Bradford pears, barberry, euonymus, ivies, and there's a whole slew of plants that are listed. And I can go through some of them, but the main gist was that there were a lot of southern New Jersey growers that were not aware of some of these plants on the list, barberry being one of them. And it turns out that there's quite a few container growers that have literally hundreds of thousands of barberries on their nurseries. Now, the law, if it does pass, will give you a 4-year window, 4 years of continual, 3 years of propagation and 4 years of sale. And then after that, I believe you no longer can sell that particular plant or any of the plants that are on the list. A couple of surprises to myself: philodendron, which I never even seen in flower, let alone seed, is on that list. Also, Viburnum marisi is on that list. Uh, Japanese maple, I believe, is on that list too. So there's a number of plants on the list that have come to a surprise. But in any event, the problem that New Jersey faces is that we are one of 4 or 5 states left in the union that does not have an invasive plant species list. So we are now at the mercy of all the other states. So regardless of whether you feel something is invasive or non-invasive on that list, we're taking it from surrounding states. So a surprise to many people, New Jersey being the garden state is one of the last ones to actually have this list composed. So from there were subsequent meetings going on throughout the state. And then again, this conservationist presented at every one that I attended. And then there was a group that got together. Part of it was New Jersey Nursery and Landscape Association. There were also fellow nurserymen throughout the state, some landscapers, and there were a couple of New Jersey Farm Bureau was present at that meeting. And it was decided that we combat it by coming up with a consortium of across the board of landscapers, foresters, politicians, nurserymen to come up with a board. Now, I think right now it's at 13, and that 13 board member would make decisions on invasive plant species and pass that on to the state Senate. However, before that was even uh, passed, or it wasn't passed because then it went to the state assembly, and actually the signers of the bill are mainly from Central Jersey. Ed Durr, who has now been replaced, was also a signer on that bill. And then it went to the governors, and the governor finally he vetoed it. The interesting part about all this is that the DEP from the very beginning did not want to be part of that 13 member consortium. They just did not feel they had the capabilities, mainly financially, to take part of that, and they didn't want to have any responsibility once it was passed. Um, Governor Murphy vetoed it because he did not feel it should pass without DEP being involved. So that's where we're at right now. And I don't know where it's going to go after this. I do know that I'm still part of this group that's in discussion about how to best serve the state as far as coming up with additions to that list. But if you read the bill, the plants on that list are not getting off. They're going to be on that list. So there are some surprises. And then that 13 member panel would then be more proactive as far as future plants being on that list.
Interesting. My thought is early on that maybe what we're looking at is there wasn't something that it was not that it was invasive, but that it wasn't native, and that people would mistake the two and want them on that list. Did any of that take place?
Yeah, that was discussed before it went to the state senate, and yes, it was emphasized that a non-native plant is not necessarily invasive, and that was another important part, especially for the nursery industry. Well, nursery and landscaping. I mean, there's plenty of trees and shrubs out there that are not native, but are not invasive. And that is where that 13 member panel would make decisions in the future.
Gotcha. Um, let me ask you this: where do we go now? Where do we
Well, it
take
has to
this
go
thing?
back to the Senate, and somehow, at least as far as Governor Murphy is concerned, the DEP is going to have to be part of it. Now, the DEP claims that they do not have the personnel or the funding to be managing or overseeing an invasive bill. So that's where we're at with that. So I don't know. I know I'm going to continue to be part of the group, and I certainly can pass that along uh, for future meetings if anybody's interested to be part of that. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
because the importance is once it does pass, there's going to be a panel that makes decisions future wise on what is invasive um, and what would not be considered invasive. So right now, there's concern that if the conservationists take hold of this, they'll put a lot of material that we grow and use in the landscape on invasive list. And that's not the direction that we really want that to go.
No, that's we talk about the migration of trees, and we can talk about the migration of vegetation. I had this conversation a lot with the TCS members, a lot of my friends that work in the industry. Um, we're running out of species, aren't we? Everything seems to be dying. What's working elsewhere? It's a touchy subject. Invasive, native. We need to have those things completely separated. I understand that, but you know what? I did want to bring up a question. You brought up the DEP when we were doing the stuff with the like the spotted lanternfly. You know, New Jersey agriculture ran point on that, and when I heard that they were putting together this invasive species list, my assumption my assumption was simple. Why did New Jersey agriculture just come in there and drop a gavel and that's it? It's why are we even bringing it to the governor's desk? There needs to be some kind of a fair way of doing it. And I just assumed that they would be involved and really have the final say on it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was, like I said, from the very beginning, I was just at this meeting and it came up and out of nowhere. Now, if you look at the past, this actually was brought up in '04 by McGreevy. And Christie, following McGreevy, nixed it. So it actually, we're looking at 18, 19 years ago when this was first presented to the state and to the governor. And he actually did approve, I think it was a 3 or 4 panel member, and DEP was part of that. New Jersey Ag was part of that. Maybe the EPA. I'm not quite sure who the 4 people were. But when Christie came in, he nixed that. So it's been in limbo for almost a generation when you think about it now, close to 20 years. So now, as I said, we're behind the 8 ball. New Jersey's behind the 8 ball. So we're at the mercy of other states now for the list. Now, does that mean, we won't have a say? No. The whole purpose of that 13-member panel is that we now become proactive. And then I like some examples, you could have somebody who does like photography out in the woods, and all of a sudden they come across a grove of, let's say, for instance, Mariside viburnum. Well, okay, maybe there's a lot there, but that doesn't mean it's spread across the entire state. So rather than have individuals make statements that this is invasive, and then all of a sudden it becomes part of the list, it'll have to be investigated through that panel before any more decisions are made as far as what we consider invasive. Now, how do you jump on this? And Bobby, you said, I mean, we are losing, and now we have the beech is becoming a problem. So we have, we've had the elms, we had the chestnuts, we had the ash. Now it's a beech, and that could be a major, major blow, especially to this section of New Jersey, because it's one of the most dominant plants in our woodlands. We start losing beeches big time, and then wildlife loses a whole source of food. So some individuals are already putting out, like, so in the Norway maple, there's some large shade trees that can replace that. Some are native, some are non-native. Mimosa is another one. You see that all through if you're driving down 295, you'll see mimosas during the summertime. And there's plants that are being suggested that would be, again, some native, some not. The barberries, of course, euonymus are the big ones, but even European privet is on that list. Now, California privet is not, but that's an example where that could end up being on a list. And that is, again, a very dominant plant in the nursery industry and used quite often in the landscape. Photinia, I never knew Photinia, was an invasive. I hardly ever see it. It's like almost like a specialty plant in a landscape. But
basically, named plant is to the front of my house.
Yeah,
I have Euonymus, I have Photinia. Yeah.
But also, what I think one of the positives with all this is that it'll introduce, or at least, I mean, we grow a lot of it as a nursery, but it'll introduce designers and landscapers to different alternatives than what has typically been grown. So that's a positive out of all this. But as far as where it stands, it went back to the Senate. Now they got to hope that the DEP comes in, or I don't know how longer Governor Murphy is in office, but once that changes, the next government. So I don't know how long is that? Do you know, Bobby, how long he's in?
4 years. He's in for governor's in for 4 years. I think he's got another year until he switches over.
So it could be at least a year, and if the DEP doesn't join up, then it'll just sit in limbo again until someone else brings it up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that I did look on like the internet just to get myself prepped for today's conversation, and I was amazed how much I couldn't find. usually something like this, I would be. It's the talk of the cooler around the tree hugger nerd group that I hang out with. We always talk about invasive species, and then we always bring up, and that's why I want to have you back, Kevin. I know you want to do a thing on soil, but you were talking about the different trees that we could plant, and you'd be surprised how quickly we run through that. We run through the, and then when I told you were like the musclewood, and I know a lot of people are bringing it. We'd never heard of that before, so I know Frombrook, you guys are got ahead of the game there a little bit with everybody else. But I'd love to have you back on for that too. And if you could give me a copy or email me a copy of the bill and the invasive species list, I'd like to put that out to the TCS members. Anybody interested when we go to put that together?
Well, it's easy to get that off online. All you have to go to state senate and bills, and it's number 2186.
Bup, bup, bup.
I actually think that number's been reassigned. The
Yeah, hold up.
Legiscan has it as as the invasive species bill has failed, or I'm sorry, dead.
Oh, so they'll change
Real.
that?
Yeah, they reassign the numbers. So like this past week in the new session they stole that number for an unrelated bill. That's what they do. They recycle the numbers sometimes.
Okay, well, I've also got number, you're right. This is from 1213. So 3677 and 2807. Now that's the proposed bill that was vetoed.
Yeah, I did see earlier it was a two different number slash, and I'll put that up in the comments later if anyone's interested in that. What is your next meeting, or is this where are you guys at as far as putting together the list? You're unwilling to take anything off the list. There was no kind of negotiation that could have happened where, hey, if we leave, the California privates, if we leave them on, would it pass that way? I'm just wondering what everybody was upset about and why it didn't work. And when are you guys meeting again to discuss where to move forward?
Sean, you had something to
add? Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just a couple of quick questions. By the way, thank you, Kevin. This is interesting. You're enlightening me on some stuff I didn't know about. Do we know, like usually, so the bill, the old bill number S2186, was sponsored by Greenstein and Smith, and they're the co-chairs of the Environment and Energy Committee. And usually, in our experience, they're not the primary driver of bill. Like there's some group advocating for it, and they get them to sponsor or introduce the bill. And I'm wondering, so who, what groups in New Jersey were the ones pushing that asked Greenstein to introduce the bill in the first place?
Let's see here. I had some notes down. So,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to tie all the pieces. So I get that DEP doesn't want to enforce it because it's something very hard to enforce. But I'm just sure who are the advocates pushing for groups like Native Plant Society come to mind, like Master Gardeners, who would be?
Okay. Really, at this point, it was the conservationist out of Hopewell, Pennsylvania. I forget his name, but Mike Van Cleef. He's the executive director, Friends of Hopewell Valley Open Space. Now that's out of PA, but as I said, because we're so behind, we're going to just pretty much follow what's already existing on some of these other states. He is the only one that I know of, Sean, that I met. Outside of that, I don't know if any native associations or horticultural associations were part of this. A lot of it could be, as I said, individual that goes out, maybe he's doing some bird watching, and comes across a group of plants, and now all of a sudden, with the camera, they take pictures. That becomes, and that doesn't come invasive, but at least mentioned. So I don't know where it came from other than that one gentleman, Mike Van Cleef, and he is a strong advocate. So he's been pushing this in PA, and now he's in New Jersey pushing it. Um, so and so that's about all I have to say with that.
And forgive my ignorance of this. I'm just, again, for not my subject expertise. So if I say this, in an inarticulate way, forgive me. So what we're concerned about is that the list was too inclusive of way too many things that we wouldn't normally, that may technically be listed as invasive, but they aren't a threat that we would normally think of invasive. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
But the danger is if you allow a conservation, I have nothing against that. The conservationists, they have their own job, but if you allow a few people to start making claims of invasiveness of particular plants, and we don't do anything about it, then that really is where the problem comes. I'll tell you another interesting thing is that if you are able to develop a plant, so for instance, there are some barberries that are on the list that you can use, but they were developed by the University of Connecticut through money from a corporation. And now they have exclusive rights to these plants as far as distribution is concerned. That can be another down the road potential situation where you have a handful of people that could claim invasiveness of a plant, but at the same time being developing something that they can sell in the future. So that's another interesting thing I've learned in all this discussion.
The politics of trees.
Yes, that's the truth.
Believe it or not, I run into it quite a bit.
Especially when somebody has a copyright on trees, right?
It's actually they do. I mean, you have a patent that lasts 17 years once you develop a plant, and you can then control its distribution. Maybe only a handful of nurseries are able to propagate and sell it. So I'm not saying it's going that direction, but it's just something. It was interesting through the conversations. That was one of the things that came out that a couple of the nurserymen were concerned about. Nursery people were concerned about.
Well, off the subject there, I did talk to Philadelphia Agriculture just because New Jersey Conservation is going to be doing, then they might have even started a multi-million-dollar planting across the state of New Jersey. And it does seem like it's all North Jersey, not to be conspiratorial. But to get them started, I said, I talked to Tim Eiffel, and what they use for Philadelphia, they have a book, invasive, or I wouldn't say it's invasive or non-invasive. They just had what they recommend to go on trees, to go on curbside. So I forwarded that over to them. And the bones of a really good tree inventory were right there. Not going to work for everybody, obviously, because it was, street trees in the city of Philadelphia, but it was something to get them going. And I thought it'd be nice to try to compose of something that we could do throughout the state. We could easily look at and say invasive, non-invasive, what we could plant here, what we could plant there. And I do believe personally that we're going to need to have a migration of trees sooner rather than later. So to take off non-native trees off that list, we're going to need them in our community. Am I right? Or do you think I'm wrong about this?
No, Kevin? Absolutely right. We should be able to live with native and non-native plants. I don't see any reason that a non-native plant can be used in the landscape as long as it's not seeding tremendously and taking over. I mean, like the tree of heaven's a good example. That was introduced, and now it is all over the place. And the reason why it becomes invasive is that the female will produce literally hundreds of thousands of seeds in a given year. and you can't combat against that. But there are a lot of other plants like philodendron macchia that really don't seed at all. So there's no reason for them not to be able to use. Now, you can also have plants that are stoloniferous, and that's how they expand their range in a given area. But again, they're not going to do that in a landscape situation because they're going to be cut on it. On a given property, they'll be maintained, or if it's growing into the turf, it'll be cut. Um, but I think all the other ones that they like the Norway maple, the mimosa, the angelica tree, tree of heaven, they all seed profusively, and that's how they take over certain areas. So they're the ones that they're going to go for first, and I have no problem with that. But then after that, I think it's just a matter of common sense. Is this invasive? Where's the proof? Show me where it has become invasive, and that's what that 13-member panel is going to be. They'll take in suggestions, investigate it, and then say yay or nay as far as if it's going to go on to that list or not.
And this is a list that necessarily isn't one and done list. This is something that is going to be updated every single. I'm assuming every year. Something new will go on that list, so it's not finite. It's going to move on.
You're right. The problem is once it's on, it's going to be extremely difficult to get it off, and that is where we have to be as conservationists ourselves, plus people that produce plants and use them. That's where we have to be proactive with this whole decision making as far as invasiveness.
Right. So that's why I'm a little surprised that the way I read it, I thought this was it was I thought the Eagles were going to win. Also, I thought the Eagles were going to win, and I thought this bill was complete. So, but I didn't bet on either of them. Anything you want to add here, Kevin, for the future?
Just that you mentioned about the money that's coming in. There is a ton of money that is coming in, I believe, through the feds up and down New Jersey. I'm meeting with people with Trenton. I'm meeting with people down in further south towards the beach because I want to, as a nursery, we want to be up, on top of this to produce the trees that they're going to need. We're talking, I think, $30 million within the state, split up between about a dozen different townships. So it's not all North Jersey. It is some North, Central, and then South Jersey. Also, Philadelphia, the city has a Philly tree plan that they're going to be implementing in the near future. Again, millions upon millions of dollars. So it's an exciting time, and that's why I think it's important that we start introducing alternate species that are not invasive, but ones that people, how many people do you know have heard of Celtis or hackberry? Not many. Kentucky coffee tree. Now everybody sees the pod, but now they've come out with all these, non-fruiting types, which is very good. Macchia, right. Perodia. Perodia is another one, and again, Perodia is not native, but it's an excellent tree to be using in your landscape. So I think there's a challenge ahead, but I also think it gives opportunities for the introduction of new and different species and genus of plants.
Interesting. We didn't hear that. Now, Kevin, since I have you on right now, and Sean, if you're listening, you wanted to give a talk on soil. You want to give me a quick run through that? It's too much to break down into like a little bit, and I'm going to.
Well, in the Total Pro Landscape Show is at the end of the month, which is hosted by New Jersey Nursery Landscape, and I've been asked to do a presentation on soil. So what I do is I start with the physical aspects of soil. Now in the presentation, I'll actually do a soil texture test right there, which is an easy test to do. but it gives you an idea of the texture of the particular soil that you're working on. And then I'll talk about how water moves through soil. Then the second half of that is the chemistry of soil. I believe I break it down so that you're not taking a chemistry class, but at least you're getting an idea of what happens chemically in the soil, in the solutions, and then how the texture and liming can improve situations. So I think anybody that's in the trade that's serious and professional should know soils and how you can manipulate the soil, not so much by adding organic material, although that's important, but simple liming, which is a cheap alternative to fertilizing everything too. But I can show chemically how lime changes the chemistry within the soil solution so that plants can take up minerals that may not have been if the pH was off kilter.
It sounds like a whole nother episode. To be honest with you.
Yeah, and I can eliminate the physical aspects of soil and just concentrate on the chemistry of it, or I can do the whole thing. But I think the other thing too is like the soil textural determination is such a very simple experiment, but you can show people in minutes the texture of their soil. And that to me is professionalism, when you can show somebody what's going on right underneath their feet.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up is beech trees have been dying around in Camden County. We've lost a lot of beeches in the last 10 years, 5 years, and we have a few, I would call them heritage beeches left, but the vast majority of our bigger ones have all, they got bores in them, and they just, real quickly they passed away. So that stank. But yeah, I start to see when I was going up the road, I've been all over Jersey these last few weeks, and I'm like, how do they still have beaches? They're doing really well there, and their black walnuts are doing really well. But we're not.
The issue with the beech now is that it's a nematode that is living in the buds of the beech, and so when it breaks bud, that nematode's right out there as soon as the leaves are unfurling and causing damage, and eventually, they'll kill the beech. But yeah, you walk through any forest, Camden, Gloucester, Burlington, just loaded with beech trees. And they're also one of the biggest suppliers of food for wildlife, all those beech nuts that are produced. So you lose them. The deer eat them, the birds eat them, all the small animals, squirrels, they all use those beeches for food supply. So that is, to me, it's scary because there's no cure right now. There's no spray for it. Although I believe a couple of the tree companies, I don't know if Davy's involved with developing solutions to spray, but as of right now, there is no cure.
Yeah. I was going to ask that question, well, what do we do about it? But even if there's something that we could do about it, that really only affects our, street trees, urban forests. It doesn't protect our woods. What are we going to do when it starts to hit, our wooded area, that people aren't necessarily, vested in going out there and saving a singular tree. I see a lot of that happening for the last 10 years. We're able to do short-term work with, we'll feed an oak tree on somebody's front lawn because they want to save it. It's beautiful, it's majestic, and I understand that completely. But then you walk into Knight Park or the parks that we have around here, Newton, all these. We have multiple ones, and then I see the same bacterial leaf scores just ripped through those oaks. So it's we're doing good for aesthetic value, but we're not really doing good for the environment sometimes. And I don't have anyone about that. There's no one to blame. I'm just saying, unfortunately, that happens.
There's no answer to a lot of this.
Yeah, there are no answers to a lot of this. But to get the politics and trees involved, um, I've noticed it. I mean, it's the way it is. I understand it, but what can we do to combat it? Well, does anybody have any questions for Kevin? Feel free to ask them. I'm going to take a look and say,
Hi, Kevin. My name's Caitlin. I do have a question for you.
Yes.
The other states that I guess have adopted a similar list, are they not as like, do they not have some of the things that we don't want on the list as like, as far as like um the rhododendron, I think you had said, but how are they faring, or like how are like is it successful having those like the lists and for them, like are you noticing any, and what states would be successful, I guess, with it?
Well, at that one meeting, there was a representative from Delaware, and now this was back in the summer meeting. There was a representative from Delaware and Pennsylvania, and both said that their lists are, locked and loaded, and everybody abides by them. The nurseries have a certain amount of time to propagate and sell. I think it was 4 years from the time that bill was passed. So a lot of cases you cannot transport euonymus. You can't transport barberries in areas, obviously. But you'd be surprised, like the Acer platanoides, the Norway maple is still sold. So I mean, we don't grow that because years ago we knew it was invasive. But you can still get that. I see it oftentimes. I buy bare root out of Oregon, and it's always available. Um, but yeah, they're like euonymus and barberry are the two that I know we no longer grow, and we can no longer ship. Connecticut's another state that will not allow you to. Let me put it this way: you better not get caught. Um, but New York, and I think they're all rock solid. We are only one of 5 states in the union that do not have this list. And in the case of Pennsylvania, Delaware, talking over 20 years ago, they had these lists.
So it's Delaware, Pennsylvania,
New York, Connecticut, I mean,
New
just
Jersey.
all the states that surround us.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
well, I think that's going to do it for this.
I think Sean has.
Oh yeah, sorry, Bobby. Kevin, it was just a question more like so. Bobby's committee rolls up into a larger organization, and we have a large outreach apparatus. And we connect regularly with the 30 members of the legislature in this tri-county region. How can we help? What can we do to help amplify the message that you're talking about here?
I think tomorrow I'm going to reach out to Lori Jensen, who is the executive director of New Jersey Nursery Landscape Association, and ask her, now that it's been vetoed, what's the next step? Because I don't know that. And once I have that answer, I would certainly get back to Bobby and the Tri County Sustainability Group and let you know what we're going to be. What are we going to do? What's the next step? I guess.
All right, perfect. Kevin, I did have one more question. You said there's some species that you stopped growing at Fernbrook.
Yes.
Has that hurt your business?
No, because we're pretty proactive. So we have a slew of different and not, I won't say unusual, but unheard of in a lot of cases, trees. So with the barberry and euonymus, they're shrubs. So we started growing osmanthus, false holly, probably about 10 years ago, and it's our number one selling shrub. The deer don't eat it, which is a big key. And it's just an excellent screening plant. It's not something you would use like maybe one in the landscape. It's more for screening, but it's an excellent plant. Also, cephalotaxis, Harrington plum yews is another shrub that we have been using about the same time. And again, because the deer don't eat it. So we're always looking for new material. I was just introduced to, it used to be called a purple holly, but now it's Chinese holly. And it's a shrub. And most of the hollies, the deer don't really bother. So I think we're going to be looking into that. As far as trees, uh, we're now offering Perodia, Crataegus. Now, Crataegus is out there, but Celtis and Macchia, Gymnocladus, which is the Kentucky coffee tree. Um, we're let's see what else I got. Cornus moss, cornelian cherry dogwood. That's actually a good. That's another one that would be a good sub for privet because you can grow it the same exact way and trim it and hedge it, and it's perfect. It does that very well. So we're always looking and trying to introduce new plants. What's the catalpa? And catalpa's a native too. Very fast
Yeah.
grower, very fast grower,
Yeah.
and it takes all the nasty conditions that you can put it through. Um, Poor soil conditions, wet conditions, dry conditions, and it's a nice fast grower. Another one that let's see what well we've the Carpinus caroliniana, but Carpinus betulus is another good one for shrubbing. That's the Europeans use Carpinus betulus all the time for their shrub for uh, for shrubbing. You know, you think what else we got out there? Well, the Carpinus caroliniana, great specimen, small specimen tree. So there are quite a few. Cyananthus, good shrub, and we grow that both as a shrub as a tree form, which is the fringe tree. Um, Another good one, and then certainly any of the cercis are good. However, that's another one. I think down the road we're going to have problems with because it has a vascular streak disease that's hitting the Tennessee or the southern growers. A lot of the southern growers grow cercis and dogwoods, and so they're now concerned about this vascular streak disease that's hitting them. Um, but we're always trying to find new stuff and promote it in the landscape. Corylus, Turkish filbert's another one. Will take all the nasty conditions, poor soil, sandy, clay soil, poor drainage, um, and we also do a lot down on the beaches, the northern beaches. Fernbrook does. We do a lot of installs. We have a certain program, a homeowner program down there, and so we've been introducing a lot of different trees down there as well. Stewardia, styrax, all doing quite well down the beaches or down the shore. I wish I wouldn't say on the beaches, but that's just an example of some of the stuff that we're planting on a regular basis and introducing into our customers' portfolio of plants.
Well, Kevin, once again, if somebody wants to contact you, if they want to get a list from you, I mean, I would Google Fernbrook Nurseries. But do you have a website they can go to?
Yeah, Fernbrook Farms. And that'll lead you to we have 4 businesses on the farm, but it will lead you to the nursery. And then you can see our availability, which is very limited now because we sold pretty much everything for 2024. But it'll give you an idea of what we're growing. And check out if you really want to, if some of you guys are landscapers, you really want to check out our deciduous azaleas. We grow probably about over 20 different native deciduous azaleas that are excellent shrubs for the landscape.
anybody has any questions, Kevin, that was great. I'd love to have you back when we figure out what's going on with the bill. I'd love to get some insight from you too. And I know Sean mentioned it. What can we do? Wrap something up. And I'd be the first person to champion your cause. You know that. And I'm proud of the work that you guys are doing down there in Fernbrook. But bringing these different kinds of materials to the public, for sale, and way ahead of everybody else. We've known each other now for like what, probably 15 years, maybe.
Yeah, I would say that. And it actually, now you're part of the group that we've catered to, which are the towns throughout. Now, you're not just the only one down in South Jersey we're dealing with. You know that you've been, you've talked to others, but we've catered to the shade tree commissions in the towns throughout the state, and it's worked well for us. And it's also how we're able to promote some of our new trees.
I'm going to leave you at that. I do have a lot of other things for you, but we can talk about them later. One of the things is a line clearance conversation that I had earlier that somebody brought up. A good line clearance tree to have curbside, But of course, everybody just wants like a singular tree, where I'm trying to give them like 10 different ones. And I think I just might start sending them your way. I'm going to give them your cell phone number. That's what I'll do. I'll just go, talk to Kevin. I don't have any answers for you. I'm lost,
Well, you know what?
Well, if anybody
I'll tell you what, you just made me think about something that we should put on the website, and that's a list of these alternative trees and where they're best utilized. So if you're looking for under power lines, what's, and I'm just ignorant to this, what is the height of power lines, most power lines?
Usually we want to try to top them out at 20 foot.
Okay.
So, remember when we did the those hedge maples?
Yes,
yes. They actually worked well for us. When the line clearance company knew that they were hedge maples. When they didn't know they were hedge maples, it didn't work well for us. So, but they worked out well. That height that we're at right there is a good underwire tree, in my opinion.
Yes, and it's an aggressive grower too. So even you get something as even less than 2 inch, that'll put on caliper and head size in a very short period of time.
Oh, they look amazing. I want to say that we've only had, maybe 20 of them. I could tell you curbside. That's just in Collingswood. That's just in my backyard. And hardy, they look great, and people really like them. They always assume they're going to get larger, like somebody that's out, that doesn't own the house, like coming in there. Oh, it'll interfere with the wires one day, and then you have to say, oh no, we planted under the wires for that purpose. But yeah, I mean, adding on wire friendly and something to avoid with wires is something that we need to do a lot more of, in my opinion. I still see people putting trees that I know are going to cause power issues, and public service very aggressive. They've got more money coming in, and they want their wires clear, especially after Sandy. They were running ragged this last storm. They were running ragged. We did well because we've been really, for the most part, trying to follow that in Collingswood. But I see like neighboring towns, and I was down at Tom's River. I looked at I was looking at the oaks that they planted right underneath these power lines, and I'm like, oh, not a great idea. And they were hedged out so many times. You had this like a 20-foot, like a 60-foot oak that's now 20 foot and got like a 14-inch trunk. It looks really crazy looking during the winter, with no leaves on it. But yeah, that's something that we always should tack on to trees when we're selling to municipalities or to governments. Public service should should have a say in it, and I think they do ultimately. And I'd like to see a list come out from them, but that's another topic altogether. I think I'm going to wrap this one up, Kevin. I'm out here in the cold.
Okay.
I'm out here in the cold like a rat. Anybody have anything else they want to add on here? Any questions? Let me know. Kevin's your man. I think we're pretty good.
And anybody,
Kevin, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're all, anytime you want to make a trip up to the farm, we're more than happy to entertain. We have tours with Bobby's been up to the farm on tours, and it's another thing that we enjoy doing is inviting people up to tour the nursery and get more informed about the different plants.
Yeah, we go out. I've gone there, but multiple times and tag trees. We've gone out there and actually tagged the trees
Correct.
right on, and it always worked out well for us, in Collingswood. So we really appreciate that. We appreciate you, Kevin.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
that'd be fun for the soil also when you get a chance. That'd be great.
Maybe sometime in February we do that.
That'd be great.
Before I really get busy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should plan that then because I'm really busy and I'm expecting a tough February, March. I'm always worried about the weather. There we go.
And for that, I can give you a brief synopsis of it, and then you make the decision whether you want to eliminate some of it, you want to concentrate more on the chemistry or just the physical. It doesn't matter. It would be a solid hour, I would say.
We should do it, and I'm planning this too. Just a thought. I'll talk to you later off camera about it. But I do want to thank you for being part of this Tri-County Sustainability Shade Tree. We really appreciate you, and especially all the efforts that you're doing. And I mean that sincerely.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Loved it. I loved it. I would have, I was excited for it, because I really did think this was going to, again, like I said, I thought the Eagles were going to win, and I thought this bill was going to pass, and it didn't happen, and I've just been sunk all week.
But I'll get back to you tomorrow. I'll talk to Lori, or at least reach out to her and see if she has any further information, and then I'll get back to you personally.
And I'll put it up when we put this on the Tri-County Sustainability page when we go to edit it. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. You have a good night.
Everybody.